Good morning, everyone. My name is Bob McDavid from MetBob, and I've been asked to provide a weather forecast and routing for Leg 7 of the World ARC Round the World Rally, starting off from Port Vila on Thursday, the 17th of July, and going to Mackay. And it's interesting to see that Alta here has already made its way along that route, along that way, through hydrographer's channel, hydrographer's passage here, and from there going to Mackay. Well, the first step is to look at the Met Service combined streamline and isobar map, metservice.com. Gives us a wide view of the features around the area. So looking up into the north here, we have the intertropical convergence zone, where the trade winds from the northern hemisphere meet the trade winds from the southern hemisphere. We have the South Pacific convergence zone along here, where there's small lows and also long lines of convective showers, this particular one sitting over Fiji at present. Normally, the subtropical ridge, which is the latitude where all the anticyclones in the subtropics travel from west to east, along that line there, is located somewhere at this time of the year between New Zealand and New Caledonia. At present, the subtropical ridge is located right over New Caledonia. That's about as far north of it as it gets, and it brings with it light winds, settled weather, and rather low swells. So that's good news for our trip from Port Vila to Mackay. The Fiji Met Service analysis gives a finer picture of the lines of convection sitting in the South Pacific convergence zone well to the north of Port Vila, so there's no problem there. These weather maps here are compiled by hand rather than by computer, and they are even hand-drawn, with using logos here to show you the wind speeds in various areas. Notice again the ridge sitting across New Caledonia, providing a nice easterly flow between Vanuatu and northern Queensland. New Caledonia Meteorological Service animated satellite imagery for Tuesday evening shows the long lines of convective showers in the South Pacific convergence zone sitting just north of Fiji. Shows reasonably clear conditions, maybe a little bit of clouds at the south end of that South Pacific convergence zone around Port Vila, and also shows the rather clear skies sitting across the Coral Sea. So here is my comparative departure analysis. Each line gives the estimated trip time for that day's 00:00 UTC time, which is 11 a.m. local Port Vila time. That's for the departure time. All this table is in UTC. So it tells how much a yacht, when sailing up to 7 knots, or motoring in light winds, and taking longer with diversions to avoid areas where the wind might be below 5 knots, or the headwind might be above 15 knots, or the tailwinds above 25 knots, and also avoiding where all swells are above 3 metres. Don't worry about the colours, they're just used as to differentiate the tracks on the map. So you see some paths are longer than others, and on some lines are completely blank, Those are days when we couldn't find a trip that would avoid those limits. So those are no-go days. And then there is the best day, which just happens to be the 17th of July, OOUTC, 11 a.m. Port Vila time, when you get a course taking 11:55 nautical miles. And so now we're looking at windy.com for the voyage from Port Vila, starting 11 a.m. on Thursday, going through the Grand Passage of the Yuan Reef System to the northwest of New Caledonia. So that's west-southwest for about 270 nautical miles. Then going west to the north end of the Chesterfield Reef System, which is going about 250 nautical miles from 1.2 to 0.3, then going west-southwest to Hydrographer's Passage, through the passage, and then to Mackay. This map is colour-coded with the maximum winds through that passage. It's assuming a boat maintaining a speed of 7 knots, so it's a shorter time on this voyage, about 6 days, 23 hours, compared with my more rigorous computation of 7 days, 5 hours, which take into account all the swell and the currents. Anyway, on this map, we see that there are some areas of stronger maximum winds to the north of the passage, probably associated with squalls. There's also an area of lighter winds to the south of the route later on in the trip. And now we get down to the nitty-gritty. This is my marine exhibition model, and it's for starting off at 11 a.m. from Port Vila, going to the Grand Passage, through the Grand Passage, and then on to the north end of the Chesterfield Reef System, then on to the Hydrographer's Passage entrance, southwards through there, and then on to Mackay, taking about 7 days, 5 hours. Notice that the wind along the route is given by these red barbs. It's about 15 knots southeast for the first leg. The computer is suggesting a deviation slightly to the north at that, just as we get past Grand Passage, and then going straight on to Hydrographer's Passage. Little black arrows on this are the background currents, which are not doing too much for us in this case, but they are against us in some locations, such as through the south part of Hydrographer's Passage. If I zoom into there, you can see that the currents do get against us once we get through the passage. Oh, and just as an aside, halfway through the voyage, there is this little area here which is called Sandy Island. However, that particular spot doesn't really exist. So there might be a little bit of land below the surface of the sea at that point, but Sandy Island isn't there. And so now we can start looking at the wind forecast for this leg, starting at Port Vila at this time here, the top left, OOUTC on the 17th of July, 11 a.m. local, and that little red triangle there at Port Vila is indicating our yacht and how it performs. We now go forward in time, not going forward in time. Okay. We now go forward in time, And you can see that we're mostly in the green areas there, with a good wind stream from the southeast as we head towards the Grand Passage. We should arrive there at 1900 UTC on the Friday the 18th of July, which is about dawn on Saturday, local. Dawn arrival is good for going through the passage. Notice that the computers then do a deviation off to the northwest. That's actually during a period where a zone here of a lull zone, which is also associated with some convective showers, moves across the area, and so that's a diversion to avoid much of that rain. You can see that the rain then passes by us and we're back into the green areas, and we can resume the course to the north end of Chesterfield Reef. After that, we might move through a period of 20 knot winds, but then it eases back to, well, between 15 and 20 knots on our trip to Australia. Notice as we move towards Hydrographer's Passage that the streamlines start to buckle and turn more southerly. Zooming into that, you can see that as we proceed through the passage, we may have to get a little bit of motoring into light on headwinds, and then finally get some beam winds to take us into Mackay. And now we look at the details of the wave forecast. So here we have, when the colour-coded the waves so that those that are above 2 metres are given in fairly light blue, like this area here, and the waves which are less than 2 metres are in darker blue, down to this area here, which is less than 1 metre. So at the start of Port Vila, we have some waves less than 1 metre, and as we go forth into the ocean, we carry these fairly low waves with us for a while, but eventually as we move towards Grand Passage, we see all this red stuff coming towards us from the north. And that is rain, in fact, squally rain. And as we go west, it comes south. And so the idea is we should actually turn to the right once we've got through Grand Passage, go or spend the minimum amount of time in that rain belt. Then we can resume course back to the west-southwest, and no more rain for the forecast. In fact, that we do get an increasing swell once we've gone past the north end of the Chesterfield Reef system. We just touch the 2 metre swell briefly for a while. There it is. And then it disappeared. It eases off again, and we can go, well, it comes back again, but we can get to Hydrographer's Passage with about 1.5 metres of swell. And then once we go through the passage, it all fades away. Excellent. And so here is a graph of the voyage, starting on Thursday, 00 UTC, and we're looking at the air temperature in green, the wind gust as a dotted line, the wind itself as a purple line, and the barometer as a black line. So as we move westwards, we finally encounter Grand Passage and then do a slight turn to the northwest. This is so that we can go directly across the incoming passing squall line. Notice the barometer falls before the rain arrives. And then the wind also drops with this particular incoming squall line, but that might be just the computer averaging things out. And in fact, within the squall, within the cloud itself, there could be some gusts over 20 knots, maybe up to 30 knots, who knows. After the rain, it all settles down to a nice south to southeast flow, which helps us on a port reach as we continue going westwards. And then we enter hydroxis passage. The barometer does a wobbly, the wind goes down, and the wind gusts also go down. So that's a quiet exit to our leg 7. And so that's my forecast for leg 7. May as well take the air direct route. And if you have any queries or questions or comments, please email me at bob@metbob.com. Thank you for your attention. Bon voyage.